are live.
Welcome to the Fantasmagorium. After the departure of Steve Rogers as the star-spangled man with a plan, the mantle of Captain America was up for grabs. Through the events of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Sam Wilson was the Avenger to step into that role. Tapped by now President Thaddeus Ross, Sam, the new Falcon Joaquin Torres, and former American super soldier Isaiah Bradley head to the White House, where an assassination attempt sets Sam and Joaquin around the globe to clear the name of Bradley while uncovering a plot to destroy President Ross. Intrigue and superheroics ensue under the shadow of the shield. I am Scotty R37. Kat is pulling all of the strings. Steve now comes in red, and we are joined by Captain Puerto Rico. I think I made the movie sound better, didn't I?
You did.
Did it sound like an old-timey movie? We were ready to go.
All right. That's awesome. How are you guys doing?
Military. Recruit me already, damn it.
Very well.
We're doing good.
And we've all had the pleasure, or we've all had the experience of seeing Captain America: Brave New World. I know mileage is what may vary on this particular instance. Hopefully, it's going to be a wide range of crap to not crap.
I need to get an O-ring. Jeez, I don't like this light.
Well, and just with initial thoughts. How did you guys feel? Like, have you been caught up on Falcon and the Winter Snowman? Thus far, have you guys been caught up with everything that you needed to know to sort of enjoy Brave New World?
I just rewatched all of Falcon Winter Soldier on Tuesday because I was part of a watch along that day.
Nice.
No, I did not rewatch The Incredible Hulk, and there was nothing in the marketing to suggest that I needed to watch The Incredible Hulk. So I just kind of rolled with it because they do kind of play a clip show of shorts on a little, news broadcast to try and, do a little memory refresh on it. But yeah, that was it. I didn't rewatch anything. Falcon Winter Soldier, but
yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I'd watched all of it. There was, loose threads. Basically, that's what this movie was.
That is
loose threads all over the place.
That is a good way to put it.
Yeah, this actually felt less like a movie and more like a 2-hour season finale or second season, and kind of made for TV movie for Falcon and the Winter Snowman. That's what it felt like to me.
Well, it definitely does carry over. And when I went to go see the Marvels, people were like, "Whoa, I don't want to have to go and watch WandaVision again. I never watched Miss Marvel and all of this." But the movie did sort of a good enough job of sort of maintaining the spirit, reintroducing characters, and making it so you didn't necessarily have to see Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
No. This movie was so exposition heavy that I don't think it needed any. You could have gone in cold for this movie. It told you everything that it wanted to tell you.
Ernesto?
I did not do a rewatch mainly because I remember majority of Incredible Hulk. I remember Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I know Kat and I debated that movie to death. We were both on the same page that they should have stuck to their guns with their original plot, but given that the world was happening, they had to change course. And Eternals, well, we all know how Eternals ended, so that's really the only reference you need, how it ended. You have a dead celestial in the middle of the Indian Ocean. That's pretty much the Brave New World, as we'll get into. But yeah, I just already knew pretty much, given all the casting choices and who the key players were going to be. I'm like, oh, okay. Right now we're like 35 plus movies. I just posted my Captain America review on Letterboxd. You can find me at Martinez91 for those who are watching. And I made a point that with now 35 plus movies, you can cherry pick movies and the TV shows and have your own little storyline. And they can all connect in various ways. Like with Captain America, Brave New World, you can watch Incredible Hulk, Eternals, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's your trilogy storyline right there. And here's your part 4. Mm-hmm. And you can and then if they make it say another Shang-Chi movie, then you can have Iron Man 3, Shang-Chi, and then Shang-Chi 2, because those would connect as a trilogy based on the storyline they're going with. Like, that's where we are right now in the MCU. Whether it works or not, it's really up to the viewer, and we're going to discuss exactly where we are right now as far as the narrative we're thrust into.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because I do think that there has been such an embarrassment of riches under the umbrella of the MCU that if you haven't caught up with everything, the movie does kind of have to jog your memory for you, or jog the knowledge base and let new viewers in on what's going on. Like, there is, oh, by the way, spoilers before we get too much into it. But I think, like, one of the things that I found interesting is they bring in the Serpent Society very vaguely, sort of almost in the margins. And I kind of know what the Serpent Society is. I don't really know what it is, but I was aware of it primarily from the original title that they sort of teased with before saying it was going to be Captain America Civil War. It was on one of their announcements. And then they said, oh, versus the Serpent Society. And everyone got excited. And they said, well, that's not the title. And then they said Civil War, and everyone got even more excited. But I thought that that was something where it was like, okay, you do have to know the source material to a certain extent to really get the most out of it, I think.
Well, in the movie, they called them the Serpent Mercenary Group. They didn't go out of the way to call them Society, but you could tell the fact that Sam already refers to this guy as Sidewinder, that you would be forgiven if you thought he was a carryover from one of the TV shows, because his entire character was added during post. And I really liked his character and the action scenes with him. But he does feel like he exits the movie a bit early, and you can tell that it's something that they just kind of added in there. And if I recall, Serpent Society was more of a recent comics thing, wasn't it? Like within the last 10, 12 years? Or was it?
Oh, they've been around since Captain America issue 310.
When was that?
Few decades from now. Decades from now, yeah. They've gone through different names. It was Serpent Society, but before it was the Serpent Squad. And as of when Sam Wilson became Captain America, like 5-6 years ago, they are now Serpent Solutions, which is kind of like, oh, we're incorporated. You have to read comics to kind of like jump into that world about, oh, now here's a villain team that are now legal.
Well, and it's interesting. Oh, sorry, Steve.
Oh, I was just going to say, Giancarlo Esposito's character is great in this movie. There's not enough of him, and it totally feels like a drop in, right? It's like, and knowing what we know about how this film was made, and that he came, he's basically added after the movie was pretty much shot and finished. It sucks because you can really tell. I really tell that he wasn't supposed to be there.
No, and that's the thing that in terms of the production, I suppose if we can interject with production notes as we go. It's been sort of much ballyhooed. It was held back for about a year. They've been talking about reshoots. They've been talking about variable budgets, although I haven't been able to find anything concrete about those last two things. The director said normal one round of reshoots. Tim Blake Nelson said he came back for one round of pickups. But yeah, the Giancarlo Esposito character of Sidewinder, I felt like that was dropped in there so that they could have a Captain America villain in a Captain America movie. Because as you guys already, as Kat, you said, there was nothing to indicate that this was going to be a sequel to Incredible Hulk. But it obviously, you get more Incredible Hulk stuff in this than you do Captain America stuff. And I think that the Serpent Mercenaries and Sidewinder were sort of put in there to be like, hey guys, maybe there should be a Captain America villain.
Well, that and the fact that they said that some of the feedback they got from after they had those disastrous test screenings was that people felt the movie wasn't grounded enough for even a Captain America movie, which tells you that they probably, I think they probably redesigned some of the design of the leader a bit because he looked kind of.
No, he looked like he came from the set of Mars Attack.
But his brain wasn't big enough for that. But I mean,
no, he looked like he was about to go act.
But it's like that was there, and it's like we need somebody grounded, like Winter Soldier vibes. So they brought in Sidewinder.
Which, by the way,
absolutely
is a mistake. I didn't know. I thought it was just a made up name. But yeah. learned something new today.
But the only thing I would say about Tim Blake Nelson with the Ack, I love, no matter how cheesy it is, I love the original look of the leader. And I wanted to see just almost like a Telosian from Star Trek. And I wanted the mustache.
Come in.
Well, that's what I mean.
Now,
Like, they probably redesigned it because that's clearly not the bulbous Mars Attacks head that the leader actually has. No. It kind of looked like a car tire been revved over his head and the guts are spewing on the sides. It didn't look like a pulsating brain.
Yeah.
And some of those shots, I admit, for cinematography looks like TV show stuff as opposed to, it didn't feel as cinematic as it should have. Like you're mentioning, really leaning into the whole episode, like an episode of Falcon Winter Soldier rather than a movie.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. I didn't care for this movie. It sucks, man. I wanted to like it, but it just didn't. It didn't land for me at all. I thought the editing was really bad. Some of the visuals in the it was not. I mean, bad TV visuals in some places too. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And it just didn't land for me. And as much as I love Anthony Mackie, and I don't, and him being Captain America's fine, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't think he's the guy that's going to lead the Avengers. I don't think he's the guy that's going to lead this franchise. I don't know. I just don't see it.
Well, yeah, because it's like when he first became Captain America, or when he first embraced it at the end of Falcon Winter Soldier, he's like taking a firm stance at the end of that show. Yeah. In full regalia. And it's like, you look at the other movie, Captain America film specifically, in the first Avengers, Steve takes a position where he's like, I'm not just going to be a mascot. I'm going to go out and do something because it's the right thing to do. In Winter Soldier, he takes another position against S.H.I.E.L.D. and by extension against the government. And he's firmly putting in there the same ethics and morals that he had in the 40s, he still had today. And then he does it to the nth degree in Civil War. He's like, I'm going against the government because this is wrong. We're not doing this. But we get to this movie, and I don't feel that Sam Wilson really stands for anything. It's like he's sort of not exactly bringing up the rear in the investigation, but he's like the person you're following around during this kind of. I mean, I like the espionage story. I like the whole backstory and what they revealed is going on. I thought that was really neat, and I like some of the action. But I didn't feel you had a moment where, like at the end of Falcon Winter Soldier, he's in the suit and he firmly puts his foot down, like this is what I believe in, and he didn't get anything like that in this movie. He's like, I felt you could have almost swapped him out with another Marvel hero and essentially had the same story.
Yeah. This is one of the very few Marvel movies that I was checking my watch, hoping it was over. And I was like, oh, man. And it's one of the shorter ones, if not the shortest one.
Yeah, right? Hour 58 minutes.
Yeah. I think the Marvels was shorter.
Yep, you might be right.
Yeah. But it is obvious in terms of the editing and trying to get multiple storylines going on. It's obvious. Well, for me, it felt that Harrison Ford was doing the lion's share of driving the plot. We were sort of following him. And a lot of comparisons have been made to Captain America Winter Soldier. And I do see the parallels just in terms of Bucky and Isaiah Bradley. But in that one, you're chasing Bucky, and it culminates into an understanding between the two of them, even if it is subconscious on Bucky's part. But with Isaiah, I feel like we dealt with all of the antagonism and everything in the TV show, and seeing is going to search and discover the evidence to clear his name. I felt like it was like when are we going to get there? And then when we got to the Hulk stuff, I was like, you know who could really help with this? The Hulk.
Right.
It makes more sense for Ross's character to be turning into the Hulk, the thing that he hated the most, and then to be confronted by the Hulk. I think that would have been much better. But again, when it comes to rights and Universal and whatever they're doing with the Hulk, I don't know why that never came to fruition. But when it comes to the MCU, they tend to get the Incredible Hulk subplots or main story, like Planet Hulk. They throw in a Thor movie. Red Hulk is now in a Captain America movie.
I think they could have brought Mark Ruffalo in and make him go Hulk out. I mean, they did it in Ragnarok. They did it in the She-Hulk series. I don't think it's a universal issue. I just think it's like Nobody thought about that being a plot line. They just wanted to focus more on the political side of it, and then do like a table flip of, oh crap, the one thing I hated the most is now coming to bite me in the ass, and here we are. So I don't think that was ever entertained, and who knows what was left in the cutting room floor and
I
whatever
think you're
the
right. Not only do I think you're right, I think that's a problem. That's a huge problem. If nobody thought about bringing the Hulk into the, I mean, that should have been top of mind.
Well,
Although
I think
to be fair, I kind of don't want him in. I wouldn't even want him in there because the Hulk hasn't exactly been the Hulk
No,
since
he's been family
Endgame.
cookout Hulk.
The one thing that I loved, and I absolutely loved in the third act, is getting that beautiful rage back.
Yeah, it was cool.
It's like, good lord. And even though it's motion capture and CG, it's just great seeing someone just angry and
I loved it.
destroying shit for once.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was awesome to see. So I didn't hate the movie. It just didn't land right for me, right? Because I actually chuckled out loud. A couple of parts were funny to me. I love the Rage Hulk. I love seeing that because they kind of nerfed Hulk for the last couple movies, and or a couple times we've seen him in MCU things, whether it's movies or TV shows.
Well, the last two Avengers movies, especially.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what the
Hulk
Russos
kinda
have
ruined
against
it.
Hulk, man, but they nerfed him hard. Yeah, so there's some good things in here. I don't mean to sound like I totally hated the movie or anything, but it's just on the whole it didn't work.
Well, I would think the reason that they didn't think of the Hulk plotline is because, given the movie's building up to that finale, then it's no longer really a Captain America movie. If it becomes Hulk versus Red Hulk, and because of the rights situation in Universal, they can't call it a Hulk movie. And I don't think they could find a way to justify having it be Hulk versus Red Hulk, but still call it a Captain America movie.
No,
Unless they had a double climax where you have that fight going on, and then you have Captain America going after the leader.
I just don't see where the problem is with having him there. I mean, Ragnarok got away with it.
Yeah.
Right, but he's not the focus of the client. Like at the end of it, it's Thor versus Hela, and Thor kind of stepping up. Like, yes, Hulk is there and he helps out, but that's not like you can tell with this movie with the way, spoilers, when we get into spoiler territory, with the way the leader is sort of dealt with at the end, it's like clearly the final whole thing is Hulk or Cap versus Red Hulk. And if that final thing in this movie was just the Hulk versus the Red Hulk, and that's the whole end of the movie, then it's like.
But it wouldn't have been.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kat. It would have had to have been parallel endings, right? With Cap and the leader, and then Hulk on Hulk. It would have to be in parallel at the same time, and that's the only way you could do that. And I think you only bring in Hulk at the very end when you get that Hulk portion. But yeah, maybe it just didn't work for the way they were writing the movie. It's a bummer.
Well, I do want to say hello to the chat. Herc130 is here. Hey, Flyboy, Hulk smash! And unfortunately, you're correct. Hulk is disabled. Yeah. Old man Bird, it's good to see you, Eugene. Should we go? Oh,
yeah. You should. Even though it didn't land for me. Kat liked it. I think Scott liked it.
I did.
I don't know if you liked it or not, or how on the scale. But
I liked it fine.
Yeah, I think
but I still have my issues with it.
I call it lower mid tier MCU. It's not trash.
No, and I think that one of the detriments that I'm sort of hearing from people is that a lot of it is referential to they either overuse the title of Captain America when referring to Sam, or they keep referring to the legacy of Steve Rogers. And
I felt that was very heavy-handed.
Steve that many times in the movie.
Sorry?
I thought they kind of dealt with most of that in Falcon Winter Soldier, where they kept constantly talking about Steve and wouldn't shut up about him.
Right.
Whereas here, it kind of, and again, I also question what was the purpose of making this movie, because it's like, we know that Feige wants to get to X-Men. That's what he's excited about. And people have pointed out that Feige did not give an interview on the red carpet for this movie. He kind of zipped through to the other side. And it's like, okay, so you made a decision to have Cap give the shield to Sam. You gave him a TV series, which was kind of mixed, mostly positive.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I guess the original plot of this movie was too out of this world for fans liking for what they would expect from a Captain America movie. so they felt the need to tone it down. And then I read another article which said that from inside people working on the production said that Disney interfered because they didn't want them to take any political stances. They wanted to make it as appealing as possible. But I don't feel the movie was trying to take any such stances anyway. Whereas
There's
so
really no
that was kind of odd when I read that, because it's like, but it does go back to my initial criticism that Sam doesn't really have. It's like, yes, it's a fun movie, but Sam does. It's like you're not really putting your foot down firmly as like, what do you stand for as Cap? And I kind of like the old suit that he had at the end of Falcon Winter Soldier, the white one.
Yeah.
They change it for the sake of selling more toys, but it
Right.
doesn't stand out as much as that white one does.
That's comic books for you.
That's true.
And Steve had 5 different suits all through his trilogy, so you kind of have to like. But I will say that I support that. I do love his suit at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because that is comics accurate to when he had his first issue #1, which I have, and that thing is still worth a lot.
Nice. Yeah, I was a big fan. I was a big fan of that suit. Although I think I saw some clips. I think I watched like a YouTube sort of compilation music video, and it was like Captain America Legacy, and it incorporated Steve and John Walker and Sam. And they do get to the parts near the from the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I was like, I like it, but it does look a little goofy. I don't know if I would take him seriously throughout the movie. And I did like the incorporation of everything, like the goggles. There was one internet reviewer who said that there's an Ant-Man helmet, and I was like, well, when he's flying, he's wearing a helmet. And I've heard so many things with people when it comes to Sam Wilson, because he didn't take the super serum, which is present throughout the film as well. It's like Bucky shows up and Sam's like, I should have taken the serum. When did we get hot and cold running super soldier serums?
From the series.
Is that from the TV show? Right. Okay.
That was a big part of that TV show, which kind of feel like would have been like the continuation when it was originally New World Order. Because when you have New World Order, which was, I believe, the title of the first episode, I thought that this movie, prior to the reshoots and everything, was going to be an exploration of the next arms race, which was going to be the super soldier serum. Because I don't believe for a second that addressing Tiamat in the Indian Ocean was the original focal point. I think it was all going to be about the super soldier, and that's where the leader was going to come in because of gamma radiation and all that stuff. So I thought that was going to be like, the new arms race. And where does Sam Wilson fall? Because at this point, even though Steve Rogers was basically a mortal man, he was beyond mortal. He was a super soldier. Here, Sam is the most mortal man in the room, and he has to basically, okay, what I got to do here, which would make the third act of whether I should take it or not kind of be more impactful. But because of what we have right now, it's kind of lost in all the different parts of what this movie actually is. So I kind of, while I like it fine, it is kind of disappointing of what that expectation would have been, fizzling into what we have here. So I don't know what fantastical, not grounded enough thing happened in the first test screenings that audiences were complaining about, because this one really is fantastical compared to what we have in the TV show, which was actually more grounded, because it's basically freedom fighters versus the world that was post-snap.
Right.
I think what it is, like, to your point about the story was probably originally going to be about, the super soldier arms race, which is the whole reason you bring Stearns back into it. I think maybe they figured because you could tell they went with a very political espionage revenge. I call it the Skyfall plot is basically what this is. But that's obviously different from a super soldier race because of what I'm trying not to put too many spoilers, as people in the chat have indicated they haven't seen it. But it's kind of like that plot, and so that has a more political, grounded type tone, even though you do definitely have fantasy elements going on. And regarding the original subtitle, it's funny, for New World Order, I rewatched Winter Soldier last night for the first time in 6 years. I'm like, that New World Order would have been a great title for that movie too. It's exactly what Hydra's trying to do, and they even say it at one point. It's the new. I think it's what Zola says. It's the New World Order, and I'm like, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That movie still holds up. That one was fantastic.
That movie was amazing. Yeah.
That whole chase scene with Bucky, Widow, and Rogers, like the hand-to-hand combat. Oh my God, chef's kiss.
Now Now, as far as things I really didn't like, which Steve will agree with me, and I think others will, is that Joaquin Torres, not only is his dialogue just awful. Here's an example. He goes to meet Isaiah Bradley, and first of all, he would recognize him. He's like one of Sam's best friends. He should recognize Isaiah immediately. But okay, we'll throw that aside for a second. It's like you're there to train with this guy, and you're insulting him already. Oh yeah, you're the old man. You're gonna fall, break your hip, all that crap. And then after he tells him who he is, and he straightens up, he's like, "Oh, sir, much respect." And then he immediately goes back to like doing the mocking the old man thing. I'm like, oh my god. And that reminded me that in the first episode of Falcon Winter Soldier, after the opening action scene with him, when Sam and Joaquin are in the outdoor like market cafe, he tells Sam about these conspiracy theories that people believe in that Cap's on the moon. And they end the conversation with Joaquin bringing it back around to that, saying, "Is he really on the moon?"
Yeah.
I get what they're trying to do with this character. They're trying to make him juvenile, looking up to Sam, almost like Sam is going to be mentoring him.
Right.
But it feels very forced at the expense of the dialogue. It's being horrible. And
That
it
would
really
work
doesn't help when you and it really doesn't help when you bring in Bucky in this movie. Spoilers, but it doesn't really matter. But when you bring in Bucky and tease that great chemistry they have, and it's like that's what Joaquin and Sam need, but they don't have it. It's just cringe.
They tried to make Joaquin Robin, and it did not work.
Yeah.
Not only that, his dialogue sucks, but to me, the script of this movie was horrible. The entire script, the dialogue all the way around is pretty bad.
Lemon.
Hello,
See,
Lemon.
I think it's odd that they're making Joaquin into Falcon when what they really want to make him into is 1940s Bucky. And I mean kid sidekick Bucky.
Yeah.
Sam called him Bucky in the movie, which was weird.
Did he?
Yeah. It blew me away. I'm like, what?
Wait, what happened then? When Bucky...
He calls Joaquin Bucky in
right.
one scene. And I'm like,
yeah,
why
he does.
And I'm trying to figure out why he said that. Like, why'd you call him Bucky?
Well, another thing which threw me for a loop is
referential.
the reference when one of the characters says, "Oh yeah, Bucky running Congressman Barnes, like he's running for Congress." I'm like, wait a minute, aren't you in the Thunderbolts movie where it looks you're just totally like what the heck does that? It's like a blink and you miss it line or cough and you miss it, more like it. It's like, wait, what? He's running for Congress?
Yeah.
Are we entering spoilers or no?
A little bit, just a little bit. I'm not gonna. Well, chat, tell us if you care or not, because we won't do too deep.
Yeah, tell us or not, because that's one of the reasons why this movie I almost rated it lower, because my brain was imploding on itself. Mainly because I'm like, okay, I know in real world politics, crazier things have happened, but in MCU politics, I'm just like, okay, Congressman Barnes, and we're having Mayor Fisk coming in next month. I'm trying to see how much I can believe Bucky making it into a I just don't see it. There's too much blood on his hands for that. No, there's not enough redemption there for that. I'm just saying you would need the mother of all PR to make sure he wins.
Right.
But again, real world politics that shows PR schmear.
Well, yeah, like Steve wouldn't even give him the shield because of his reputation. He loves Buck and respects him and knows he's a good guy, but he's like, I can't give you the shield, dude.
Right.
Well, and that's I thought that was interesting, but also it's one of those things that does like everybody know what Bucky has done? Does everyone know that Bucky killed Tony Stark's parents?
Well,
I don't know about
I don't know if they know all that, but he was pretty much the world's most wanted man all through Civil War, and people would know, why were you running away? You can't just throw that under the rug.
Also, when I rewatched Winter Soldier last night, when Zola's going through explaining everything Hydra's ever done, it does show that the Winter Soldier killed Tony's parents, and it's like I must have not noticed that the first time times I saw it, and they mentioned at the end that all of Hydra's secrets have been, because Widow dumps it all on the web.
Oh, yeah, that is true. So that's already public knowledge. So at that point, it's just
however, not everybody must be aware of it, because Tony didn't find out until the end of Civil War. So maybe it's one of those things that just got buried and wasn't really like, it's not really clear, but I guess you have to dig for some information. But
for sure. I do appreciate Lemon in the chat saying, I never care about spoilers for anything. They don't ruin or replace the experience. I'm on the same side. But we got to check. Some people disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think, old man Bird? Do you mind spoilers or not? Because I know you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, oh man, how many times have we got to teach you this lesson?
Like Sam wins. Like Sam wins.
Yeah.
But
Although,
again,
who knows?
it's,
Maybe whatever happens at the end of Thunderbolts will win him the votes.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're getting Mayor Wilson Fisk.
Right.
Yeah.
coming up, all right. I mean, come on.
yeah, and it's like looking at the future of the character. It's like getting into box office. It did well, made 88 million domestic through Sunday. They've already predicted it'll add 12 million tomorrow, so 100 million for the 4-day holiday weekend, plus 92 million overseas. So that's not bad.
That's
And
not
the
bad.
audience score for general audiences is a lot higher than the critic score. So
Yeah, I think right now it's around an 80% audience score, which is fairly decent.
yeah,
and
and
the score is
yeah.
terrible from what I've been hearing. It's very low, and that usually does kind of tip it a bit.
yeah, and the $180 million reported budget is said to be that's the budget for the final version of the movie you've seen, not all the stuff they cut, which is
Right.
So I think they're almost.
Gonna be about
they're not,
Yeah,
okay.
it could be more. And again, even when they were doing reshoots, they had to halt production because of the strike, so that probably added more to the budget. And they were
when the real numbers come out next year or the end of this year, it'll be.
Now I do think
Did they film in the UK?
Say that again.
Did they film in the UK at any point?
I don't know.
I don't
Because
think
if they do, you would probably know, because in the UK they have to say on the tax returns how much the movie as a whole
I
would
think
cost.
this was shot mostly in Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah, this one was. This definitely looked like typical Trilla. It did say Trilla Studios, so that's Georgia. But I also think that assuming Doomsday is going to keep its May 2026 release date, that whatever Cap's role is in Doomsday will still be the same, because it's too late to change it at this point unless they were to delay it. Because again, that's going off how people respond to this. Because people are already saying that he might not get another solo Captain America movie. And like, well, that depends on where we are after the 2 Avengers films. If he's assuming he's still Captain America and still around, because Mackie said he wanted to play the character for another good 10 years. So they could do it. I mean, I don't think we'll get another political espionage type grounded Captain America movie after these next 2 Avengers films.
Yeah. Although it's kind of refreshing to hear that, because usually when you're already a couple movies into your career of a franchise, you always hear about, oh my God, another movie that I got to do. It's nice to hear that, I want to be here for the next 10 years, which is, it's refreshing. It's refreshing to someone who actually wants to be here rather than the opposite. And I get that sometimes, like the old guard, they want to do something else and branch off and not be tied to a single thing. But I don't know if it's a messaging thing or just the mood of it. But it's just like, okay, I get it. But can you stop sounding so ungrateful at the same time when you do that shit? Because a lot of the time they do come across as ungrateful. Oh my God, I got paid $15 million and I can't sit on this chair for 8 hours for makeup.
Yeah, or like how all the proper British actors who played all the professors in the Harry Potter movies always shit on them later on, and it's like, this is so horrible. It's like, well, you signed the contract to stay on for 8 movies.
The contract, and it paid for the next of your all the residuals you're going to get for life.
You knew it wasn't Shakespeare or Royal Shakespeare Company when you signed on, so it's like, what are you complaining?
Exactly.
That's the thing that Chris Evans had said when he was first starting into it, when he was talking through First Avenger and Winter Soldier, and he was like, "Oh, we heard that you had been hesitant to take up the role of Steve Rogers," and it's like, yeah, it's like 8 movies, it's 10 years of my life. Maybe I don't want to do this forever, but as you get into it and you do it, you really start to enjoy the work. And it is work. Like I know a lot of people say, oh, you get paid your $15 million and you don't want to sit in the chair. But also, like, I remember the audio commentary for the first Fantastic Four with Chris Evans, and Michael Chiklis was like, you would not believe how grueling it was for Evans. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I was wearing a suit. He had to just sit there and do like push-ups and sit-ups to prepare for a take if he's walking around without his shirt on, and he basically has to flex all day when he's on camera. Now, I'm not saying that's the hardest job in the world, but it is physically exhausting. Like, I can understand how you wouldn't want to do that for 10 years.
Yeah, but all those zeros really changes one's tune. I'm just saying.
Should anyways, right?
I
It
suppose.
makes sense if you're doing a lot of stunts and you get injured a lot, and it kind of feels like when they ask you're going to do another one, and you think about all those injuries, you might want to be like, can I get a break? I just finished doing this one. I do not want to talk about the next one just yet. That
Yeah.
I understand, but not when it's just like, really? Have you seen your paycheck? You're fine. Quit complaining.
Lemon Pie says, I heard when there was no kidney pie on set, those actors rioted.
Not to the Game of Thrones said there was a lot of kidney pie.
I'm glad to hear that that Anthony Mackie wants to keep playing the role. I think he's great as Captain America. I think he can be a great Captain America.
Yeah.
I think the writing has suffered in this film, but that doesn't mean that the writing's going to suck in the next film or the film after that.
And
So,
I do see him leading the next Avengers.
although I don't see him as leading the charge and being the leader yet, at least not yet, that he could get there, right?
Yeah, I do see him leading. I see it. I think if you go back to Winter Soldier when he's having that conversation about being a vet and having to deal with, platoons and all the stuff about, the most comfortable pill I had was a rock and stuff like that. That is the kind of person that kind of has seen shit and he knows what to expect. And being next to what amounts to godlike beings for that amount of time, he has already been thrust in the world. Okay, I know what needs to be done. I've seen how the best can happen and what the worst can happen. I have seen friends die. I have seen friends come back. So I can see him leading the next Avengers team. How that's going to look like when we get the next two Avengers, it remains to be seen. Maybe we'll get a scene where he and another version of Steve Rogers are working together and they're both bouncing off ideas. But then Steve Rogers said, no, you're in charge. I'll lead. And like you lead, I'll follow. I can expect seeing that in the Avengers movies coming up.
I agree that the character has the experience and background to lead the Avengers. After this movie, though, I don't. This movie,
the writing doesn't serve it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it was him-hawing a bit, right? It didn't advance the ball as where I wanted it to go to see, like, oh, okay, then bam, we got our, he's the next guy.
Yeah, for a movie that's Brave New World, it's like that's it should be a double entendre of the movie, but it's not. Sure. It's like not just how is the adamantium race going to change things, but also what direction is Cap really going in this movie and going forward. And again, he doesn't really take any stance. He's just kind of there, and he's the guy who the story is happening around. So it's just
You know how, Kat, when you and I are discussing movies, and I always say, I'm kind of sitting in the theater and I'm rewriting the movie as I'm watching it. If it really wanted to be political, I'm just saying, if it really wanted to be political, given where we are right now, I'm not saying it has to do it before because this movie was being filmed while we went through an election and all that stuff. How great would it have been if you really wanted to tie everything back to the Incredible Hulk, if you really wanted to tie it back to the Super Soldier? How great would it have been if you get Ross in office and his first act is to ignoring what happened in She-Hulk, and his first act is to pardon Blonsky, Abomination, and he appoints him as his head of Secret Service. Because with all this new super soldier stuff happening out there, you're going to want to have a really, brick of a strong man in the Abomination as part of your Secret Service. And that's like the first strike of, oh my God, you pardon him? Do you know what he did? And with what happened recently, in a few years, that would have been like timely if you want to get politics. That would have been fantastic. I'm just saying, if you really want to think about an idea, that would have been fantastic.
You're not wrong. I would have been okay with that. But again, that would have again cemented the idea that this is more of an Incredible Hulk 2 than a Captain America 4.
Yeah.
Old Man Bird in the chat says, are there any 10 women in this film?
Well, we have a junior mint. Does that count?
No.
Also, can I just say,
no, not that I saw.
As far as controversies are concerned, the whole thing with the Israeli actress being cast to portray an Israeli character was way overblown. I get it that tensions were high during Hamas, Gaza, and all that stuff. But when you actually watch the movie, I think the whole controversy was overblown. Like, okay, they just don't want. And I get the character, the original interpretation of the character has a lot of, you can call it problematic, and it's kind of like a 50-50 of whether it's problematic or not. But when you end up watching the movie, I'm just like, y'all overreacted over nothing, number one. And number two, good Lord, she is tiny. She is tiny.
Yeah.
The Red Room did not bring their best people. I'm just saying.
But that's
I don't know. She was pretty badass.
No. She could not throw a full-grown man over her head if she tried. I'm sorry.
I heard that, but then I was like, so what's the size difference between Shaba, was that her name? And Black Widow? Like, what was the difference in size? And it's like a couple of inches. Like, she's not as small as she's portrayed in the film. She looks smaller, but she's
the camera angles have a lot to do with that too. The camera's often looking down at her.
Yeah,
that gives it that impression a bit.
But the moment she walks into the briefing room, that's where I'm just like, oh my fucking God, 12-year-olds are now leading a mission here. What the hell's happening here?
Yeah,
but I also got the sense.
Problem I had with the directing of this movie was the camera angles.
But I also the camera angles, if that's what did the disservice to that character. But I am okay with a 5'3" woman being able to be part of a team, because when she is fighting people, she is essentially fighting alongside Sam and Joaquin, especially in that hallway fight. She's doing her own stuff, but there is assistance coming from Sam with the shield and everything like that.
Yeah, but if you look at ScarJo's Black Widow and everything she's been, and you compare it to this character, it's night and day.
Yeah, absolutely. A camera angle, because they're exactly the same height.
Yeah, and if it's a camera angle thing, fine, I will give you that. Yeah. But just the moment she walks into the room, I'm just like, get the fuck out of here. You are not doing any damage here whatsoever.
But also the ability for a 5'3" woman to be able to beat up a 6 foot, 200-pound man. Yes. Is that unbelievable? Yeah. Is it as unbelievable as seeing a man slowly poisoned by gamma radiation turn into a giant red rage monster? No. The girl beating guys up is more believable.
Yeah, but he at least turns into the monster.
But she was trained to be the monster. The Red Room.
Yeah, but I look at her, I'm just like, I can take you on. I don't care what Red Room.
I did really like the misdirection with that character, though.
Yeah, so did I, because her being introduced into the movie, I was like, oh, she's going to be like a henchwoman. She's going to be bad. And when she ended up being an ally, I was like, good. And so, yes, Old Man Bird.
There are no 10 women here.
There are no 10 women in this. And speaking of which, it's strange because one of the surprise cameos near the end of the film, I saw her on the red carpet, and I was like, you're an attractive woman. What did they do in this movie to make you look CGI?
I disagree. She looked fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
I didn't notice it either.
What are we talking about?
Scotty said they're like de-aged.
There's a weird thing. Yeah, Liv Tyler's in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 17 years. She looked aged up appropriate.
Yeah,
I think the way that they shot it did a disservice, even just to support what you're saying, Steve, is that they never do a proper close-up. There was no shot to establish her. Everything is shot
too.
Not even glass bars.
Yeah.
And I thought it was strange.
I think to your point, because the movie was reshot so many times, there are some set scenes where they are outside in daylight, and she's there with the rest of the cast. So whatever was in the original cut, she was relegated to that one scene.
Okay. Yeah,
so I guess it makes sense why she was on the red carpet providing more than that one cameo would allow.
Well, and also it's interesting because, again, with the pickups, there were obvious green screen moments where they were lit. Like, you know how when you're outside and the leader was lit and it was like, this doesn't look right. Like the background and the way that
They were
You're not there. I can tell you're not there. And maybe that's the uncanny valley thing that was going on with me, is that if you're in a darkened room, why do you look like this? It just didn't, the way you were lit didn't jive with the environment.
And there were some weird shots too. Like early on in the movie, first I think Tim Blake Nelson did a good job disguising his voice.
Yeah.
Because like I assumed that was going to be the leader talking on the phone. I'm like, that doesn't sound like him. Maybe it's somebody else. But after he hangs up, I think on Sam early in the movie, there's an awkward shot where it cuts to the leader, this high angle, like this Dutch angle, where he's half shadowed, and just really quick shot of him hanging. Like, why did you show that now? Like, why don't you wait to have the big reveal when they get to the bay? Like, that was just kind of weird, like a awkward insert, and then he goes to that character's house in the
the Admiral.
What was that about? I'm like,
that was.
And then all of a sudden he teleports to the hospital at Walter Reed. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the training exercise is going on right there. He walks up and kills somebody nobody sees or hears.
Nobody sees
right?
it.
And that's what SEAL Team 6 or whatever it's supposed to be, right? I mean, these guys, yes. But the whole movie's
thing to do what he did. It's another thing for somebody to have a kill shot right away. So I'm like, okay.
I thought the entire movie was cut weird. So yeah, it jives, right?
Yeah.
I did like his powers though. I thought that was kind of neat. And I like the reference that the song is Mr. Blue, because that was his alias in the Incredible Hulk.
I like that.
But the thing I also got confused by is that if he's able to do that to anybody, then okay, Captain America wrecked his show in the Indian Ocean. Well, then you could just do that again, and two shakes of a lamb's tail create another international incident. Why is he so upset and turning? It's like, oh, I guess I'll turn myself in now to expose Ross's secret to do it this way. Like, or you could just stay in the shadows and just keep brainwashing people and causing more international mayhem and not go to prison.
Or walk up to him and kill him with your little dial thing.
Well,
or kill anybody you want. Be dum with your little dial.
Well, I do appreciate that it was sort of a humiliation to show the world the monster that Ross was, even though it had already been established that was done when they show the flashback with Harrison Ford and the fake mustache sort of freaking out behind the lectern. But like, all you had to do was wait longer for him to keep taking the pills.
Yeah.
And he would have got angry at something.
I think they did a fairly decent job establishing his motivation, the leader's motivation. So
they did. I really like what the leader's doing in his motivation. I thought he was a good. I just don't think the way he shot and lit and everything, and the way like I mentioned, those awkward scenes kind of ruin it a bit. But I think he could have been a great villain for this movie. And for that matter, I think Harrison Ford did a great job as Ross.
Oh, he was fantastic, more so than the role required. Like. I put this in my review that it would have been great to see William Hurt reprise his role and take over, because the last time we saw him was in the Black Widow movie, and sad to see him go. May he rest in peace. But man, Harrison Ford just brought his A game.
Yeah,
and he brought the character's humanity, which we saw a little bit of it. I'm going to keep referencing it because it is in the world. We saw that humanity with William Hurt's character in The Incredible Hulk, where he thought that Betty died in the explosion and the Hulk saved her right there at the end. So to see him trying to want to be a better man than what he was before, while also trying to get this treaty with the Celestial Island intact, while also trying to wash his hands from the sins of the past, and it's all bubbling up, and it's great. It's a good man wanting to remain good while also trying to acknowledge that he wasn't always good. You see Isaiah in the movie referencing, he got his name Thunderbolt for a reason. And I'm just like, oh shit, that's right. He is Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross.
Well, it's like, for instance, Dr. Stearns did not commit any crime to be shanghaied to a black site. It's like Emil Blonsky came there and forced him, you're going to do this for me. And he didn't have a choice. And so Ross just scapegoated him for his own ineptitude. And it's like, that's why the leader's not really it's only because of the things the leader decides to do. And I like the kind of parallel where it's like both Isaiah Bradley and the leader were experimented upon, because it's mentioned that Ross upped the dosage on Stearns. Yeah. And it's like, the bad thing about the leader is that you're punishing guys like Bradley, even though you're sort of not in the exact same boat, obviously very different political situations there, but you're still both being experimented on by members of the U.S. government and being screwed over by them. But he's going about his revenge in a messed up way. Whereas
Yeah,
Bradley,
with Isaiah Bradley, it's more based in history with how black people were
right,
experimented on,
exactly.
with Leader,
Sure.
it's more like, oh, it's the Nazi situation. We're going to bring you over so you can help build our rockets.
Right.
Except for the fact that he hadn't done anything evil like the Nazis.
Exactly. But in turn, by keeping him there and not honoring the deal, you basically got bit by the hand that was being fed.
Isaiah Bradley absolutely stole this movie for me.
He did. He's great.
Every time he's on screen, it's electric. And
Carl Luckey is fantastic.
The relationship and the chemistry between him and Sam is fantastic, and it jumps off the screen. And I think you know, you can't make the whole movie about their relationship,
right?
But man, I would have liked to see even more of that.
I felt his storyline was incomplete in the Falcon Winter Soldier show, because I'm like, dude, it's nice that you got him an exhibit and them to finally public acknowledge, but that's not going to solve. Like, there's a long way to go there, and I get it. This is only a movie, so they don't really have much time to, you know.
But I did enjoy the whole thing with the limo ride where he's, you know, they're trying to get him to like, come on, because he really is a stick in the mud, unfortunately, because of all that shit. But them trying to get him to, you know, bring out that man you used to be, I like that. It was like a big brother situation, except the big brother is the younger brother because he's old as shit, basically.
Right.
Well, I thought it was an interesting parallel between Bradley and the Leader. Is at the beginning of the movie, Isaiah is saying, like, you know everything that he's done. Why are you going to work for him? Why? Right. And it's because all of the flattery, essentially. It's like, he wants me to restart the Avengers. Like, this is big. But then at the end, Stern says, why are you still following his orders? He knows that Bradley is innocent, and yet he's still why are you doing this? Yeah. And it does, and as you said, Sam never makes that stand as to why he's like following. And the closest we get in terms of that sort of idea is when Bucky shows up and says, Steve gave people like an ideal and hope, but you give people something to aspire to. Yeah. And that's the closest we get to that reconciliation. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Does it mean that he rose above the office of the presidency by being more of a symbol of America than even the president? Like, where did that culminate? And maybe I am being a little bit too defensive on it, because I do love all of these characters. It's just that they were all sort of put in a shoebox, shaken up, and it's like, and there's your movie.
Yeah, and I agree. The ingredients were there. They just weren't cooked properly. I agree that there were elements of him wanting to aspire to the American ideals, because Steve, whether he wanted to or not, he was the icon. He was the symbol, because he took up the mantle in World War II, and people know him as Captain America. The big shoes that Maggie was trying to fill here with Sam Wilson is, when you see it in the trailer, you're not Steve Rogers. You're right. I'm not. And it should have followed it. We saw it peppered there, but it didn't hit the home run.
Right.
On it.
That's a good point too. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Something that I wanted to touch on, because Sam doesn't have the super soldier serum, and we do have a lot of suit mechanics doing the heavy lifting in terms of his superheroics. Yeah. We have the Falcon wings that are treated with vibranium and have that same kinetic energy power. We do have, obviously, the vibranium shield.
Everybody's got a goddamn Iron Man suit now.
Well, it didn't seem so much like an Iron Man suit. And so when he was getting, sort of beaten, I was like, oh, you did. Oh, you did. But he does apparently have like a carbon fiber, some sort of either vibranium, something going on where he can get stabbed, but it doesn't do a full puncture. He gets a hatchet to his appendix. No biggie. There were some things that sort of strained my suspension of disbelief as to what Sam could pull off.
Yeah, that was what. Ever since that first trailer when he touches down on the compound in Mexico, that's when I'm just like, there is no way in hell you can do that without the super soldier suit, unless that suit you're wearing is part Iron Man suit, which would that's the only way you can suspend that disbelief, because even with the vibranium wings, you would not land the way you do and not break every bone in your body. Because he
That's okay. I thought that was
came in hot. He came in hot.
He did.
Well, you had that happen in the first Iron Man movie when the Mark I suit, crashes in the desert and he's just a little dirty and dazed, but otherwise he's fine, no injuries.
Yeah, but he still looks like it's like.
We've also seen Iron Man in that suit get thrown around like a rag doll in terms of the things he's crashed into that should have killed him or broken every bone in his body.
Should have, but at least with the Iron Man suit, you do feel like, okay, there is some protection there. If you start thinking beyond that, then yeah, he would already be mush.
Well, people have been bringing that up with the shield. Well, people have been bringing that up with the shield, that the things that everybody can do with that shield, which really only Captain America, like Steve Rogers should have been able to do as a super soldier. And like when they, at the beginning of Falcon Winter Soldier, when they play the sizzle reel advertising John Walker's debut, and you see him, the way he's throwing that shield around, I'm like, how is he doing that? Whereas when Happy Hogan tried it, granted he was not in great shape, but when he tries it in Spider-Man Far From Home, he fails at it miserably. He's like, how does Cap do that?
Well, remember, Sam during the series is trying. He's got to practice and practice and practice with it.
Yeah. He does practice it, but even then, when he tries to stop it the first time, he is moved inches, feet away. Yeah. So when you have the serum, you can grab it and throw it, and you're fine.
Yeah.
And the movie here tried to mirror the Winter Soldier, where you have Steve Rogers facing off against Batroc, where he was like, "Hey, I want to take you on," and then Cap takes off the helmet and he fights him one-on-one without the shield, without guns. He goes him and he beats his ass. We get the same with Sam and the giant serpent member, and he's getting his butt kicked. And I'm just like, I kind of like that he's getting his butt kicked. He's like, no, I got it. I can do it. I kind of like that as far as comedic. But then
I heard a rib crack there.
I'm like, as the movie progresses, I'm just like, yeah, you need the serum for this. But again, because he's scrappy and he's got the benefits of flying around and stuff like that, it works to his advantage. But there are times where I'm just like Scott, I am suspending way too much here, especially when you get to the third act. I'm like, woo, you are surviving a lot, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because, I don't know, because of the training or because he's part of that paramilitary program that allows him to keep his wings, that he's used to flying at high altitudes and speed, that maybe he's used to it. And that's where I suspend it, because I'm just like, the character has been training his whole life or his whole military career to this. So he's already a savant to it. But there are times where I'm just like, yeah, but you're fighting an F-16. Come on, man.
Yeah.
That was a funny bit too. I don't even know if it was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be funny, but I laughed. It's when President Ross is in Japan and he's speaking to the prime minister and trying to negotiate with him. And the minister, of course, knows the dirt on Ross, and Ross doesn't know that yet. And the minister says something like, "Oh yeah, like that's really rich. Coming from a country which is so used to taking everything it wants." I'm like, "Oh yeah, like Japan has never done that before."
Right. Imperialist Japan.
Also, that's the one part that I didn't buy, that they would both have this Russia versus US kind of like standoff in the ocean, where I'm just like, Japan, you do realize that you need the US on your side, right? Because without knocking, it's like, hello.
Taiwan. They don't have the international stretch for their self-defense force to get their ships down there that fast.
Yeah, Madripoor is not going to save you out of this one. You need the U.S.
That was funny, but interesting choice for the
country. Way, the actor who played the leader for Japan, he looked eerily like, I'm not. I don't want to make it sound like they look too similar, but he almost looked like Ken Watanabe, like he was related to him. I'm sure they're not related at all, but there was one I'm just like, are you Ken's son? Because you look like you're related to him, like almost pristine look-alike. But other than that, yeah, he's there.
Yeah, that was a situation where they needed to pick some country, and the roulette just, I guess, they came up with.
And the thing is that they had France and they had India, right, in the conference room, but they settled on Japan, which I don't know why, but I thought the third act would take place somewhere in Japan because of the cherry blossom. But then I realized, wait a minute, are there cherry blossoms in DC? I'm like, there are. So, okay. Yeah. I thought
they gifted them to us. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that part. That's the one thing missed out in U.S. history. So when I saw the cherry blossoms in the trees, I'm just like, does the third act take place in Japan? But then I realized, no, wait, Washington D.C. does have a cherry blossom garden, and it kind of makes sense. Okay, well, I thought that's where it was going to be set.
Yeah,
because I believe the series had Madripoor, which is also off the coast of Japan. So I thought that's where the movie was going to carry over.
Speaking of which, I thought that at some point, the power broker Sharon Carter would have shown up again, but I guess they buried that pretty quick because of the fan reaction to that in Falcon Winter Soldier.
Well, I think they were also going to bring her back for Armor Wars, but now that's also being put on hold, so we might not see the broker for a while or ever.
Because at the end of Falcon Winter Soldier, she gets a full pardon, but they obviously don't know who she is and what she's done. And Cap doesn't know that she was the power broker either. Carly did and died for it, but
well, maybe
I thought she was going to show up again, but then she didn't, which I'm fine with because I didn't like that reveal.
They might have bring her in Ironheart because
might.
It might happen, but if Armor Wars is not going to happen anymore because now it's been either shelved or put on hold, then the only other place that she might show up is in Ironheart. Other than that,
do you think there's a version of this movie where Rhodey might have been in it at some point because of all the back and forth about whether Armor Wars was ever going to happen?
I think there had to have been tossing around because if Armor Wars was going to happen, then it should have been at least discussed. But again, we don't know because we don't know what ideas they were throwing around. Because the same team that worked on Falcon and the Winter Soldier worked on this movie, but then you got 5 other writers, so who knows what the original imagination was.
I think one of the common observations, and accurate as well, is that Captain America 3 is essentially Avengers 2.5. And as much as I enjoy the references and interconnectivity of the MCU, asking for more and more of these characters to show up just, I think, does take the attention away from Sam. But I don't think that this is doing the film any favors just by, again, this is basically Incredible Hulk 2, just based on how many people are there. And one conversation that I heard, and valid as much as I like this movie, I want to defend this movie, but I as long as the arguments are rational, you guys are, you're whacking all of the moles. Is we had Liv Tyler, who had nothing to do with Mark Ruffalo because it was an Edward Norton Incredible Hulk movie. Her father is Thunderbolt Ross, who is played by William Hurt, who is now Harrison Ford. So the only 2 people from the Incredible Hulk who are here are Liv Tyler and Tim Blake Nelson, right?
Correct.
Like there isn't even a coalescing Incredible Hulk reunion. I like that I'm okay with recasting, but at a certain point, I don't know. Should there have been another Betty Ross introduced?
No, because if you can recast Thunderbolt Ross without anybody batting an eyelash, then I don't see why you can't keep Liv Tyler.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they didn't recast all the other Avengers when they recast, Banner, and they didn't recast Tony Stark after they recast Rhodey.
That's true. That's true. I guess, long history.
The only reason they recast Rhodey is because Terrence Howard wasn't getting paid.
Sure.
Well, wasn't getting paid what he wanted.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if the contract says pay me my money, then I'm going to walk. That's how it is.
Yeah, he got paid more than he got. I think he was the highest paid actor in the first Iron Man, actually.
He was, and then when they told us, "Hey, we don't have to pay you this much money because we're going to give it to this other guy who is going to be spearheading our universe," which I'm sure Howard would probably be still at night, waking up from a cold sweat, kicking himself for not swallowing his pride and just pushing along because he could have renegotiated had he stuck around. He could have renegotiated, but because he got so prideful. That's how it was.
Well, it is job security. And then I have nothing against Kirsten Dunst, but I do remember that she had a thing recently saying that she wasn't paid as much as Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man. And it's like, what's the name of the movie? Exactly. And so when Rhodey is sitting there saying, I should have been paid for Iron Man 2 as much as, no, you aren't Iron Man. That's the thing. Is your name in the title? Then sorry, you get a pay cut.
The only thing that would have at least helped him was because at the time it was the biggest risk. Not just making the Iron Man movie. The biggest was casting Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man because of his history as not just an actor, but his private life,
Oh, of course.
being a complete roller coaster. So at that point, you're thinking as him, it's like, all right, I'll get my money. The movie might be great. The movie might be nuts. Either way, I'm going to get paid. And then when the movie works out and it continues to work out, you're not thinking few steps. You're thinking about, no, the contract says you pay me my money. That's as far as he was thinking. He was not thinking the big picture as Feige and everybody else was thinking.
Now, here's a question. As far as the logic, like you said, how this kind of morphed into an Incredible Hulk sequel, seeing as we think that it was probably going to be an arms race over super soldier serum, do we think that's inevitably how they were going to get to X-Men? Because we know that that's what Feige kind of wants to get to. And to say that we're going to start this whole big launch of super soldiers when you're simultaneously trying to prepare to bring in the X-Men seems sort of like you're butting heads there. It's like maybe we should stick with one or the other, and then they eventually changed it.
I feel with having a lot of super soldier serums out there in the world would at least allow for more larger than life characters to be utilized in the MCU, but not exclusive to the X-Men, because there are a lot of antagonists and heroes within the comics that all of them have, super strength. That's like a big thing that a lot of them have. And it's one of those things that would kind of make the world more dangerous because you have all these characters. Like I could see a scenario if this were a different movie where the Serpent Society is all decked out in snake-themed costumes, and you have two characters who are super strong, and you need a super soldier to fight them, like a typical Steve Rogers. But because we're not going to get that, it doesn't make sense to me why, if you're introducing the MacGuffin of it all with Celestial Island and the Adamantium, and you're going to have the Avengers Doomsday with Avengers, they're going to be adapting Battle World from the comics, where they're going to bring all these realities together. It doesn't make sense to me why this would be the addition when I totally believe at the end of the last Avengers movie, it's going to be a brand new universe, and they're going to cherry pick mutants into that reality. I think this is just dropping a name because we're going to get to the mutants at some point. I don't think the serum would have anything to do with that.
Well, and even then, in terms of plucking people randomly out of different timelines, universes, multiverses, whatever, like that's what's going to happen with the Fantastic Four. They're not coming forward from the past. They're coming from a different reality.
Yeah. Right. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Kat, but Miss Marvel at the end of that series, they did tease her friend saying, hey, I studied your blood and I think there was a mutation, and it had that X-Men theme in the bottom, which I'm just like, how you just threw that in there just to drop a name. So I don't think any of that is going on, because this movie was pretty much tying up loose ends. I hope they remember to readdress it when we get to the X-Men, because if you don't address it, then you just threw it in there just because, hey, we got the rights back.
I don't know.
That's something they might just forget conveniently.
Because Miss Marvel was never a mutant; she was an Inhuman. That's the thing.
We also know that the Fantastic Four came from the 616 Sacred Timeline universe until the accident. Because in Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange mentions that when he sees them, he's like, "Yeah, weren't you guys from the 60s?" Like he's familiar with them, even though he hasn't been to the multiverse yet. He's like, "Yeah, you guys were around like in the 60s, and you disappear," or however the line goes.
Yeah.
So, because before that, obviously, they didn't have superpowers, and then they ended up somewhere else. So, we'll see how that brings them into the.
It depends, because if you look at the trailer, that looks like that's very 60s aesthetic still.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no, I know. It's like they from the 60s they traveled. They got zapped into a different multiverse with their powers, and this multiverse is like a retro future 60s.
Well, we'll see. We don't know until we actually see the freaking movie.
But yeah, we'll see.
Can't wait.
But I do like that idea that it's either a different universe or they were wiped out of consciousness and nobody remembers them. Period.
Yeah, no, they weren't wiped out of consciousness, like Kat said, because of Doctor Strange remembers them. But you're big in the 60s, right?
You're around it, something like that. I gotta go back and watch it.
I'll have to rewatch because that is going over my head right now. I don't know why.
So it's definitely referenced, and it would make sense, right? So they get They go to space, something happens, they get pulled in. When they think they're coming home, they get pulled into a different universe, and they're stuck there for some reason, right? So I think the first part of Fantastic Four is probably that, and then living wherever they are, whatever universe that is, and then by the end of that movie, they'll be figure out a way to come home to the 616.
Yeah, just with this movie, it feels like it's an open and shut story. Like, here we're going to remind you a bit about the past movie, and we're going to tell an open shut story, which doesn't really lead him. It's like, okay, there's adamantium there, but people were already theorizing that way back when Eternals first came out.
Yep.
So it doesn't really set where we're going. Like, even though you have the reporter at the end mention it's a brave new world as we return, it's like, well, that doesn't really mean anything because it's not like the fight was over. Yes, the adamantium was the MacGuffin for the countries, but that wasn't really what the whole movie was about. So it's like,
great if the final fight happened on the hand of Tiatum.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I do wonder what their focus of the original movie, like how different it was going to be, because this at the end of the day just feels like they just kind of slapped together. They couldn't make up their mind of what they wanted to do, and it becomes mostly a standalone, very safe type movie that just feels more like a streaming show than it does like a movie. Even though I do like that it's only 2 hours. I do like that it's only 2 hours long. I think it is. I still think it's a fun movie, and I enjoyed it. But obviously, it's not on Winter Soldier or Civil War levels by any means.
It's saved by acting. I will say right now that it is saved by the acting, because the acting here, at least from me, between Isaiah Bradley, Sam Wilson, and Thunderbolt Ross is what saves this movie. Because I'm invested in all three of them and what they're trying to accomplish. Everything else is just like, oh, can we go back to the acting? The one time I'm watching an action comic book movie and I want to go back to the acting.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird because also both Marvel and Disney, they seem to be looking completely past this movie, right? They don't seem. It's almost like they just want to get it out and get rid of it and move on to Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four and the rest of it.
Because it's like they weren't going to take a tax write-off on it after how disastrous it was. Like, well, we have to do something because you don't want to alienate the talent, especially if you're going to double down on Anthony Mackie in future movies. So it's like, well, hopefully this will fix it. And who knows? The box office isn't bad for the 4-day opening weekend, 192 million worldwide. So
no, it's not bad, but it's not good either.
It's not good. It might break. It might.
If it has legs, we have a 400 to 600 performer right here. We might if it performs, it might perform like the Lion King Mufasa movie. I see it performing like that. It's going to have some legs.
Maybe.
No,
I don't know. It's not. Well, it is gonna. It has a good audience score, so you might be right.
Yeah, it doesn't have any major competition coming for a bit.
Now, can I ask, since I mentioned this at the beginning, we're now at 35 plus movies, and Scott, you brought this up about this being essentially a Incredible Hulk 2 because of all these characters. Are we now in a situation where when we're going to watch the next Marvel movie, do we still want it to be isolated, or should we just embrace that it is now pick and choose who's going to show up? Because I'm okay with other characters that have already been established to show up, but the writing has to be there. You can't just throw someone in there and not make something of it.
Well, the next movie that's coming out is GoBot Avengers. Like, the Thunderbolts are essentially, like, they are saying that this is well, they're not saying this. I think it looks to be a Suicide Squad-esque Avengers movie. Each one of these, aside from Yelena and Red Guardian, they all come from separate wings of the MCU. There's a lot of backstory. There's a lot of history that goes in a lot of different directions. I know you've got Elaine, who is going to be sort of our Nick Fury for this team. And then is it the Sentry is the main villain? Is that what we're figuring?
Yeah. Well, Taskmaster also comes from the Red Guardian Yelena movie.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, but my question is, well, that movie, it's intended to have all those characters. I'm talking about in general for the next Marvel movie that is either following one character and you have cameos from other heroes from past movies. At some point, is it just a matter, no, we don't want them here, we wanted to just focus on this character, or we're okay with them being here, but you got to write a better script?
Wait,
it always, I as much as everybody says it always comes down to the writing, a better story, a better script. If you can tighten that up with the caliber of acting that you have here. But I think it is something that is a bit of a cross to bear for any MCU movie, in that this franchise, part of the reason that it's successful is because of that interconnectivity. And it doesn't have to be laid on thick, but yeah, I think that you do need at least something like, you need something to show up and make sure that it still references the greater MCU. Now, when you look at the Fantastic Four, how is that possible? Well, then there has to be someone in like a post-credit sequence. Even with the Marvels, they tried to ham-fist in the Beast at the end of that.
Yeah.
Like, were there any cameos in the Eternals? I didn't see it.
Not that I recall.
No, I don't recall any cameos, because that
they did introduce new cameo-esque characters at the end.
Yeah.
The Harry Star Fox and what was it, the dwarf character that he played?
And then the post-credit scene was the Black Knight, right? So.
Yeah, and then I'm going back and looking at the Thunderbolts roster, and it's like, okay, Taskmaster, Yelena, Red Guardian, I see them. Okay, they're together. We'll see what they've been up to since Black Widow. Bucky, okay, we'll see how he fits in. John Walker makes sense because he's been, recruited by Contessa. Well, actually, we know the Yelena was recruited by Contessa as well.
Yeah.
The one I'm curious about is, Ghost. Like, what's she been doing? We haven't seen her since Ant-Man and the Wasp, and like that was like 7 years ago. So, where have you been? And since her powers presumably, I don't know if they were totally fixed, because again, Ant-Man went into the quantum realm to retrieve the quantum cell or whatever it was that helps her with her condition, and then he got trapped. Well, in the trailer, she doesn't seem to have her ghost abilities unless they're hiding it. So I don't know exactly, like, where have you been and what have you been doing and why are you in, like, what if you don't have that problem anymore because you've been fixed, then what is your value to the super? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and seeing that last new trailer that debuted in the Super Bowl, I'm just like, I get it. Like, this is like, because in the comics, the Thunderbolts exist not because they have anything to do with Ross. It's based on a quote. Like, when lightning strikes, men have to usher in and fight the good fight. And they're supposed to be villains and anti-heroes who are rehabilitated, like the Suicide Squad, minus the bomb on your head. And here I'm just like, you guys lost. There is no way you're going to win this. So I'm curious to see how it's going to happen, because when you see that trailer, people are basically turned into dust like World of Worlds. I'm like, how are you going to win this?
That's the whole thing, right? Elena even says it. Elena says, we're punch and shoot or whatever she says.
No, I know that's the joke, but seriously, how? I'm really looking forward to see how, and I hope it's gonna be a dumb reason, because then I'm really gonna be like, what?
I don't know if it'll be dumb. It'll somehow they'll figure out how to talk Sentry into suppressing Void.
Yeah, because he could just lift his hand and just go like that. That's how he's doing it. I'm just saying.
If Ghost still has her power, she's the only one who would be able to really, because you can't really shoot her. She's the one who could go literally up against a totally nut Sentry and do something.
Yeah, she can evade him, but for how long?
She can evade him and get close to him, but the rest.
Yeah, but the Sentry is supposed to be a Superman level threat, so that's where I'm just like, okay, how are you all gonna do? Because you don't have a Hulk and you need one, and you don't have a magic.
Yeah, but like to your point though, we saw that in Suicide Squad where you didn't really have super powered people. They were just like marksmen and mercenaries, and they went up against whatever that villain, whatever her name was.
Starro?
No, in the first one.
The witch.
Oh yeah,
witch.
Yeah. Enchantress.
The Enchantress. That's it. Yeah, and it's like the same kind of deal. But anyway, getting back to this movie, unless we have any more to say about Brave New World, what do we give for our scores out of 10?
I'm giving it I keep waffling between a 5.5 and a 6. And I'm gonna give it a 6. I'm gonna stick with a 6. I enjoyed it. I liked the performances. Did it make a whole heck of a lot of sense? No. Did I suspend my disbelief throughout most of it? Yes. Do I like the Incredible Hulk? Yes. Did I like seeing Samuel Stearns back? Did I like Harrison Ford? I liked Isaiah Bradley. I liked the continuation from giving it a 6. I think it fits within the MCU. I think it's an entertaining outing.
I'm also giving it a 6 out of 10, 3 out of 5. I came down from my 3.5 after sleeping on it. I can't help but wonder how much more amazing the climax would have been if they hadn't told you he was going to turn into the Red Hulk, and if that just kind of happens, you know?
Yeah.
And even though we knew it was going to happen, I felt that they leaned into that so much in advertising that watching it felt a little bit underwhelming. It's like I feel like I've seen this, and because Cap is not super powered, it's not as much of a. It's not really a fair fight. So it's like yeah, it's cool seeing Ford Hulk out and be down to do that. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. But yeah, I'm gonna give it 6 out of 10. So 3 out of 5 is where I end on it. I mean, definitely not in the. I don't put it at the bottom 3 like the official critic score does. I think it's better than that. And there's 35 official MCU films if you exclude all the other movies that have been tied in from multiverse reasons, like just 35 solid. So I'll give it. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, 6 out of 10. What do you give it, Ernesto?
I was wrestling while I was writing because I remember 2 other things that have happened in the MCU that would have dropped this down to a 3. And I'll bring them up real quick. You can tell that the writing team, especially with Feige and the TV shows on Disney Plus, are not talking to each other. Or, as Steve has mentioned, we're forgetting important shit in the wider narrative. Because if you remember Secret Invasion, President Ritson was on the brink of being killed by a Skrull, and he declared persona non grata to all metahumans and super people and all that stuff. That would have, I don't know what his election presidency was, whether that was his first term or not, but it's kind of amazing that Ross beat him when he was kidnapped previously. And usually that wins you elections, as we've seen in the real world, that when you're targeted and shot at, that wins you an election for your next political cycle. So I would have loved to have seen how Ross beat him in this election. It kind of didn't make sense to me that I'm just like, yeah, but in Secret Invasion, you should have won your presidency. What happened here? So that's where I'm just like, nah, I'm not gonna pay attention to that because that's just the writing team just for. It's like when we have our issues with Star Wars, Cat, that the writing team just forgets what happens previously and they just make it up as they go and they address it to the detriment of the franchise. And the other thing that is like, I really feel that Harrison Ford was doing all the heavy lifting. Like, if it weren't for him, I would have really rated it much lower because there was a lot of other things that I'm thinking about this movie that as you're writing your review, they start popping up. That's why I don't like giving my immediate reaction, because when you start thinking about it, it's like, wait, this happened and this happened and then this happened. Wait, this happened too. This is not working now that I think about it. But because of the acting being so strong, I would give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm. Steve?
So I gave it 2.5 out of 5. So I'll stick with that. It's 5.5 shields out of 10.
There you go. See, that's and I was expecting lower.
So 2.5 is like a 5 out of 10 then, right? Yeah.
2.5. Yeah, so five shields.
5 shields. That's good. Shields. Yes, I get 3 shields out of 5.
3 shields.
Yeah.
3 shields. 3.5 shields.
Yes,
2 shields.
in a world with no more shield.
Outstanding. Well, I'm glad that we all went. I'm glad that none of us said it was absolute shit. It was just a disappointing outing. Could have been better. I think we all agree it could have been better.
Could have, would have,
some of us more than others.
Could have, would have, should have.
Yeah. Either way, Captain America will return in some capacity. And I guess we will probably convene because I'm still excited for Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four.
Oh, yeah.
So when it comes to the MCU,
are we still in Phase 5 or have we begun Phase 6?
I don't know anymore. There was no clear differentiation between phase. There was no clear differentiation between phase.
I am so sorry I asked. I apologize. I retract my statement, Your Honor. Please
I don't think they know.
Here's something else that's messed up. No Way Home is clearly the second half of Far From Home, the way they style it. It literally picks up at the very same scene. And No Way Home feels more like a proper ending to that storyline, which all started with, his grief on Starlight. But No Way Home is not considered a Phase 3 movie. It's like Far From Home, they say, oh, that's the end of Phase 3. I'm like, how is that the end of Phase 3? Like, it doesn't. So the phases have never really been that logical the way they lay it out.
I always thought that the bookend to every phase was an Avengers movie, and then they stopped doing that. Like, because even after Age of Ultron, it was
Ant-Man is the end of Phase 2, and the only thing that places Ant-Man after Age of Ultron is the one line by Hank Pym when Scott says we should call the Avengers. He's like, nah, they're busy. Hank's like, they're too busy dropping countries on other people right now.
Right.
So remember, officially, Marvel never designed the phases until about halfway through what we call Phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it was never official. It was a fan thing.
Yeah, the fans did it, and then they picked up on it.
They adopted it, but it was like halfway through Phase 2 before they did that. So then,
but if you're picking it up, picking it up. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody had a name for the DCEU until somebody said it and they ran with it.
Yeah.
Well, and even then they weren't happy about it. They were just like, everybody else is calling it that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you in Phase 7, everybody.
Right. I called it the DCFU, by the way.
Yeah.
The ShapeQ. This is all ShapeQ.
DC Film Universe. Get your mind out of the gutter.
But we will, obviously, Captain America will return.
Yes.
And
Marvel Cinematic
will return.
Actually,
Steve Rogers will
Marvel
return.
Cinematic Film Universe.
Yeah.
He'll either be Captain America or he'll be wearing a Hydra gear. We don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? All right. We out? Are we done?
I think.
Oh, thank you to the chat.
Oh, right. I always forget about the chat because I'm a jerk. I wanted to say thank you to Herc.
I'm sending my link to Letterboxd. Can you put it in the main chat?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Big shout out to Herc130 for being here. Thanks for showing up, sir. And Lemon Pie, you are a mensch. Appreciate you being here. Also, thank you so much to Eugene Bird. Appreciate you being here. Apologies
thanks again for supporting the channel the way you do.
Oh, of course.
Absolutely.
And I apologize. We will try and pay an attractive woman to be in the next Marvel movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, there were only 3 women in this movie. There was the girl we were talking about, the ex-widow, the former Black Widow, running the security. There was Liv Tyler at the very end, and then there was the other girl whose name I forget, who's the
Aisha
something member of Secret Service, and that was really the only 3 in the movie.
Yeah.
Although Aisha's not a 10, she's probably a California 7 or 8. So there you go.
And there you go, a higher rating than the film itself.
I do have one question that I think we all have to answer.
Certainly.
With everything that Sam Wilson has been through, down to having to face a giant, angry Harrison Ford, Hulk, can he still get approval for a bank loan?
No. I was wondering where he got that truck. All right. Excelsior. How come it won't end? End the stream.
It never will